Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that is what makes them awesome. Today, our guest is Andrew Kap. Born and raised in New York, and still to this day a proud New Yorker, Andrew always considered himself as normal or average. But the time came where he had a paradigm shift and everything changed. Andrew now lives his life from a place of gratitude and puts the law of attraction into his everyday life and gets to see his life manifest right in front of his eyes. Never alone, Andrew is always on a team, and through that gets to create ripples and better the pond. Thank you, Andrew, for not being average. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Andrew Kap. Andrew Kap from New York City. I am so happy to see you and so happy to have you on my Better the Pond podcast. I do appreciate your time.
Warren, thank you so much for having me. Not only do I appreciate your time, I appreciate your show and I appreciate you having me on. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
And as we mentioned just before we got on the recording side of this, today, Andrew Kap, you get to be the lead goose and lead the way of letting everyone know what you are doing to better the pond. And as we know from the from behind you there, you've got a couple of books that you have written, and we talked about hitting milestones. So you're over the 100,000 K mark. The last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read. And of course, 3 words I use to sell 100,000 books. So I really want to get in. We'll dive into that as we go. And but before we dive into all that, all the information about what you're doing to better the pond, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, Andrew. What's your company about? And what are you excited about right now? And then we'll jump all into all the questions I have for you in the podcast.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I never have a formal mission statement, at least not yet. But the basic premise of Awesome Marvelous Inc. is taking topics that most people find overwhelming or really make unnecessarily overwhelming for themselves and condensing the ideas and condensing strategies into actionable, more consumable, more easy to implement user-friendly content. So, and you even just mentioned the 2 books, like for the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, the mission of that through this mission statement is people, whether it's law of attraction or any form of self-improvement, they quit what they start to do it, they start to get results, and then they still quit. What if they could stop stopping? If there's a missing piece there, which I answered in the book. And then regarding 3 words I used to sell 100,000 books, which is really a marketing and sales book in disguise, targeted toward nonfiction authors. It's like, can you demystify this process of selling more books? Because sometimes I think for people, it feels like, they're just like hitting the nail over, even though it's hammered into the wall, and they're wondering like what's going on here. So yeah, like I said, it's all about like demystifying these things that feel complicated, that are complicated, that seem complicated. But when you find a simple approach or a simple understanding or a new awareness, everything changes.
So, do you just find it that it's natural for you to simplify?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm a teacher at heart, and I it's even this, I almost cringe as I say that because I think when you hear the word teacher, it's such a loaded word,
Mhm.
meaning, there's a certain meaning assigned to it and the way it goes. And I don't see myself as like a teacher with the chalkboard or anything like that. I don't see myself as a teacher like I know better than everyone else. I see myself as a teacher of in specific things, only which I would hopefully be an expert in. In those specific things, I fortunately have a gift of finding a way of explaining them that things click and that it's easier to do, because I think oftentimes human nature, we tend to overcomplicate things. And for whatever, I think because I've done that myself also, when I finally get something sorted out, I go overboard and I'm like, okay, I've made it 50% simpler, but that's not good enough because I know my human nature of overcomplicating. I want to make this like 1,000% simpler, because if I can do that, then I can succeed off of that. But then it's like, hey, maybe I should write a book about it.
And why wouldn't you, right? Play to your strengths. That's really, it is interesting though how as human nature we do tend to want to, we overcomplicate, we overthink, we can overanalyze. And I always, tell when I'm actually, as your word, teaching as well, is that never underestimate the power of simplification.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. And it's, I think, I'm a student of human psychology and I'm almost jaded about it. I'm kind of like willing to look at the shadow side, even though this isn't really shadowy, but of people, because it gives you an insight. For example, I believe it's most likely that we overcomplicate things because then when we win, it gives us a sense of purpose and accomplishment and validation, which I think by and large in our society, we're almost programmed to not have. We're programmed to reach. You got to get the new iPhone, otherwise you're not cool enough. You got to wear the right kind of watch, the right kind of clothes. You got to have the trophy husband or trophy wife, whatever it might be. That affirmation of something that was difficult to get, even though we like things being easy, we also like if we can accomplish something hard because it reaffirms something that oftentimes we don't get.
Hmm. Yeah, and I agree with you. Actually, that's a really interesting point. And actually, talk about that just recently, and it's funny they bring that up. But I always say that when we look back in our education system, is when for people like yourself, people like myself, when we love to, we love simplification. So when in school, did you ever get really good marks or praised for simplifying?
Mm. In school, I didn't get the good marks for simplifying. I didn't get rewarded for that, although I did recognize a very select few teachers that made things simple and easy. And it really made an impression on me where I was like, why can't the other teacher? And I mean, I was young, I didn't get it. Just different people, different experiences, different skill sets. But I was like, why can't everyone else make it this simple? Why is that class so good and that person so good? And to be, I'll try, watch my language, but why does that teacher suck? Like what come on. And I almost wish that I knew that I would wish that I knew certain content well enough so that I could teach it, because I was frustrated that it was so messy. And you could tell, and you can tell this, Warren, when you asked a question and you saw like that kind of like, deer caught in the headlights look in their eyes. It's like, this is the teacher, they should not be lost here.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they lost explaining this thing to me? It's
Mm-hmm.
very frustrating. So
Yeah.
yeah, I never got it myself, but I got the appreciation for it being a frustrated student. And I kind of see the world through those eyes when whether I'm writing a book or I'm recording a YouTube video or I'm giving even this. We're not perfect, but I'm hoping, like, if you ask me something about something that I know, I'm hoping that I will answer in a way that's clear and cogent and, again, user friendly, actionable, easy to implement.
Right. Simplify.
Yes.
Just simplify. So all right, Andrew, what I want to know is what got you from being a gosling, and I'm going back to your very, very early roots from
Hmm.
when you're from your little, what got you from being a gosling to leaving the nest when you decided to go and leave the nest and fly out on your own to what you are doing today. So, Andrew Kap, what is your backstory?
Yeah, so there's actually multiple backstories at multiple levels, but if we're going far back, or hopefully far back that would serve your audience, I view leaving the nest as basically leaving an old paradigm, an old way of thinking into a new, more useful one. And that kind of occurred, shortly after college because, I'm not sure how old I look, but I'm old enough to remember when it was still considered good advice of like, get a good job, stay with the one company, they'll take care of you, you can retire, da 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 da. And I couldn't even tell all the details, but I remember shortly after college, it became very clear to me that you couldn't just count on a company to take care of you. There was so much economy stuff, layoffs, this and that. It was very clear, like, hey, if you could find a company that would take care of you, by all means, give them your loyalty, give them your best, and serve them. But it kind of felt to me like I'd been lied to my whole life. Like you can't necessarily count on the giant machine taking care of you. And I freaked out. I'm like, okay, this thing that I'd been raised to believe and count on, and that I went to school and try to get the good grades for. It's like, wait, this isn't a guarantee anymore. So I kind of freaked out. I'm like, okay, well then the only logical answer is to become that which I could depend on. And that's when I started my own company very, very shortly. I mean, I had a 9 to 5 for maybe 10 months, most of it, half of it just building up capital to start my company. But very early on out of college, I started my own organization. And like, that's me kind of leaving the pond and doing my own thing and really building my own pond, because to me, it was such a shock to the system. And even my way was an extreme way, like like now only I can do well if it's me. That also isn't necessarily true, but that was my mindset when I first started.
Now I'm going to back you up. We're going to go
Mm,
way back. I want to go back to your roots, my friend.
mm,
I want to like where were you hatched? Where were you born? I want to. I'm not.
ah,
We're not going to get all the details, but I want to know where your start was, and then walking from there because I think there's a lot to unpack in that space from what you just said.
yeah. Well, born and bred in New York, near Manhattan, around the Bronx, around Westchester, around that area. I'm not sure if there's a New York accent there because I lived in all parts, Long Island, Queens, this and that.
Mhm.
But growing up, it was a normal life. There's nothing that I would call traumatic about it, but not a privileged life either, like
Mm,
lower middle class type of situation. And it's funny you bring that up, and for this, it kind of makes sense. I always viewed myself as average. Like I was always in the middle of the class. Like I could get A's, but I didn't even view A's as like the cream of the crop. I viewed A pluses, but more like just in terms of height, in terms of athletic ability, in terms of popularity, in terms of all the things that are like measured to be important that kids intuitively kind of like go to, whether it's good or bad, whether it's right or wrong. I was always like I wasn't like, a nobody, but I was never going to be the prom king or the star quarterback or anything like that. So yeah, normal, average, literally like by my own definition and own determination, upbringing throughout my entire life.
what did your mom and dad do?
Dad was a teacher, and mom just did an administrative assistant in various jobs. So they both worked. So it was, and actually, it's funny, little non-typical back then. My dad would be home first because he taught, so he was out at 3 o'clock, whereas she was out at 5 o'clock.
Mhm.
So he would do a lot of the cooking, and it was a different dynamic. And he wasn't into sports, so even though I had to learn about sports through friends and through watching TV. So that's another, like, he wasn't like a hunter or, into sports or into
Mhm.
that hyper like masculine type of thing.
Yep.
So even stuff that I do or understood, I found in different ways. It's very interesting. But by that same token, loving parents that they really cared and in line, in alignment with their own personality, they did the best they could to be there for me.
Any siblings?
Just one older brother.
An older brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I'm sure for people, I wonder if other people have this awareness. I remember observing my older brother and looking for anything that I perceived to be a mistake, because strategically it's like, well, thank you for making the mistake first, because maybe I won't repeat it.
But
So
but did you?
no, no, not his mistakes. I made my own.
Okay.
I made my own. And it's funny, like I also did things that he did when I deemed them to be a good thing. Like I went to the same high school, I went to the same college,
Mm.
because it didn't seem like those were mistakes. It didn't seem like he was making those an error. So it's like, okay, here's an assured, seemingly safe and successful path. Let me follow along on this.
Hmm. That's really interesting that you say that because when you just said earlier, that's what I'd love to unpack this because you were talking about the 10-month job, we'll call it,
Mm.
which was safe. It would seem to be secure. It seemed to be, you'll be taken care of, right? To be part of the machine. It'll be very average. And yet that's actually what you fought against.
Well, I fought against. Well, there's actually two reasons I fought against it. One was like even from the beginning at that job, it was already clear to me that I couldn't count on them to look after me. Again, like I'm a loyal guy. If I know you're going to take care of me, I'm going to go all in, like all my life on you. I really will. But if I don't trust that, then it's going to be my human instinct to find something better. The interesting thing about that job in particular, and it was like media buying, advertising, things like that.
Hmm.
I remember growing up watching the movies, like everyone's on the fast track to success, and they always want their boss's job. It's like it's hyper competitive, it's cutthroat, stab them in the back. And I mean, I never want to be that person, but that being beside the point, what I observed about myself was looking at my bosses and the work they were doing and how miserable they were. Like, I don't want their job. I don't want, I mean, I'll take the higher salary, but I could not see myself even being anywhere near fulfilled. I thought their job was horribly miserable. The stuff that they had to deal with, I'm like, wait, this is what I'm gonna work so hard for? Like, if I do that, then I might as well find, if I'm gonna be unhappy, I might as well get paid a lot more for it,
Hmm.
because that wasn't the high, they didn't have the highest paying jobs. Like, if you're gonna be unhappy, at least get some kind of extra benefit. So yeah, I had that awareness, Warren, right away. It's like, ugh, no, I don't even, no matter what, I definitely don't want to stay here. To say nothing of loyalty, but for of happiness and fulfillment.
But isn't it interesting you say how everyone else though was looking at chasing that, chasing that thing, whatever it was for them.
Yeah.
Chasing the boss's job. Like if I have that, then I would have made it. If I had that, then I'll have achieved something. If I had that, right? And they're not realizing the fact is when they got there, they might actually hate it.
Yeah.
But we'll
And by
replace
the
it.
way, again, this is also my perception. Again, I was and I don't know if you would call this purposely or inadvertently, but I was groomed to feel that way, in the sense that these movies, like, I didn't watch any movies where people were like, no, I have this hyper self-awareness. No, I saw the movie, like, these are 80s movies where everyone's just like going after it. So like, it was a nurtured, it was a thing where I kind of just grew up thinking that way, in that mindset, which was, again, shock to the system, a shock to your paradigm. I'm fortunate in that none of these shocks to the system, to my knowledge, brought me down any self-destructive paths.
Hmm.
I didn't retreat into, any kind of substance or anything like that. I instead retreated into, no, now I got to like build this massive machine on my own. So I guess workaholism, maybe that was self-destructive, and then I went into that. But we react the way we're going to react, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So something came to mind here as you were talking. It's going to go back to when you were growing up and as a kid. So you can go back until either elementary school or go into high school. Um, what books did you read back then?
Mhm. I didn't read many. So like the one book I remember as a kid, a quick little funny aside. After graduating college and having starting to run my own business, I read more books in those first 2 years than elementary, junior, high school, college combined, because I was motivated to read those books. As a kid, the one book that kind of stands out was this cool book by Bruce Colville called The Monster's Ring. It's like 80 pages. It's about like as a Halloween themed book. I kind of dug Halloween, but I also I read comics, not only like, not because like I was big into comic books, but I was I was an aspiring artist back then. I actually bought comic books to look at the artwork and self teach, like teach myself how to draw.
Hmm.
And there was a time where I thought, like, I was hoping I was going to be a comic book artist, and I was a big fan of Todd McFarlane, who, like, he was a comic book artist, but more importantly, he was an entrepreneur. He was a highly successful, highly intelligent, highly insightful entrepreneur who happened to draw comic books, who happened to use the vehicle of comic books for his success. But more importantly, I just noticed how he was a self-made man. He like left Marvel and DC. Oh, look at that theme, leaving the big machine, right? He
Right.
left Marvel and DC, even back then, before I realized it. He left Marvel and DC and was one of 7 founders of Image Comics, with the only company to compete with them. And he's a self-made millionaire. He leveraged his talent and his understanding of business insight and the customer, the end user, the comic book reader, into making himself a massive success.
There seems to be a theme that's walking around today. That's really
Yes.
fascinating. It's
Yes.
instead of unfolding itself. So that is fascinating. So I wanted to take you up a little bit into, into leaving the nest and, into the time of your life when you decided to leave home. We talked a little bit about your, getting into a job and being
Mhm.
being taken care of. Take me back to that time because I'm really fascinated, Andrew. Number one, of just how you think, and I love the fact that you went from a kid of being where you thought yourself as being average
Mhm.
into being an entrepreneur and then really wanting to stand out from the rest. So I
Yeah.
think that's really fascinating. So walk me through that.
Well, so the good news about seeing yourself as average, if fortunately, if you have that the right message programmed into you, is leaving the nest is not an above average thing. Leaving the nest is part of the process, therefore perceived as easy, therefore simple for me to do. When I went to like, everyone's got their own mindset. When I went to college, for example, I was the college I chose was strategically close enough to home where if they needed me or I needed them, the commute was possible, but far enough that a daily commute was ridiculous. So that I would be on my own. So, for me, doing your own laundry, not a struggle. When I then later, years later, when I moved out, it wasn't like I wasn't homesick. It was never a struggle for me to be out on my own in that way. So being average, that was just another part of the process for me.
What was it that I want to see if was there a defining moment? And I think, I mean, you brought it up earlier saying, well, leaving a paradigm.
Hmm.
Was there a defining moment for you when that all the average, the being, we'll call it normal, and I'm just using that word, where you wanted to kind of separate yourself from that, when you wanted to shift that paradigm,
Hmm.
was there a defining moment for you, Andrew, with that where everything changed?
Well, yes and no, because it's funny, Warren, because that it's such a blurry part of my life. I don't even remember the specifics of the circumstances because there was a number of things, talking to people that are now professionals and seeing all these layoffs happening. It was like this combination of things where at some point, I don't remember the day, I don't remember where I was, but in the midst of all that, it just clicked to me, this awareness of I can't count on the machine to take care of me. And I almost wish like and by the way, if you're looking for defining moments, that happened like years later after I'd already failed in that business, which I'm happy to talk about. But in terms of that specific moment, there was no like realization of like, oh my God, my life is different now. It was more like this growing underneath the surface level of uncertainty and angst and anxiety and doubt. It's like, okay, what's going on here? And at some point, it just kind of melded. It wasn't even that I even verbalized myself, like, oh, I have to do this for myself. It was more like I just kind of like knew and I moved forward in that direction.
So do you think, would it be fair to say that that you're the one who drove that decision, or did it find you?
Ooh, wow. It's like both. It's kind of like both because, in the end, I'm the one that made the call, whether I like it or not. But I was not the one in control of the events and circumstances that brought me to that realization. That's just the world happening around me. So it was a combination of the world happening and me reacting. And, nothing's perfect, and my journey's been far from perfect, but I am grateful. I've always been aware in the sense that like I always look around. Like I'm good at pattern recognition. I could look around the room and like we'll go down a weird road. When I was a kid, in junior high, I was part of this group of just six kids. We kind of hung out. We played football together. We played hockey together. And one day, everyone except for me in the group hated one of the kids. I don't understand why, because like he was not an extra level of annoying, more to some than anything. Like, junior high, we're all annoying, right? Let's be
Yeah.
honest here. There's nothing about him that stood like, why does everyone hate him now? Well, in any case, everyone hated him. It's almost like it's like I found out it's like almost like this internal need to haze or something. But they they hated him and they gave him so much drama. And then not long after that, one of the other kids, they hated the next kid. And two was all it took. It clicked. I'm like, ooh, eventually it's going to be my turn. Eventually they're going to get to me. So I ejected from the group. And it was just as like high school was starting. It was very convenient. We're going to different high schools. I
Mhm.
basically spotted what was going to this weird social interaction and I got out. And that I'm using that as an example of like I've always been good at least hopefully seeing enough of the picture that I can make an intelligent choice. And let's be honest, we none of us see the whole picture, but I've always been good about seeing enough of the picture about making an intelligent next step.
Mhm. Um, yeah, this is so fascinating. I want to, and I just want to tie this back into a little bit of your, I mean, the work you're doing now, and I won't, well, I'll get, we'll get more into that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about the work that you're doing when we're talking about law of attraction, that, how we bring everything to us, right? We're the magnet, right? So we bring, so our energy matches our external environment. We create, our own reality. One of the concepts that I've been sort of throwing out there lately, which people are having quite a difficult time with, some people, is you're 100% responsible for everything that happens in your life.
Mm.
And it's been a really interesting point. So and I want, that this is more your expertise than mine, but I want to, look at that saying that, when you if you look at it from that perspective and you say, look at those kids, there was 6 kids and you saw the pattern, but would you say also that you were part of that you attracted that to leverage you forward?
I did it. Well, see, I attract it. So we either attract on purpose or on autopilot. We're attracting no matter what, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, it was autopilot. I mean, I wasn't intentionally attracting the situation because,
Hmm.
I don't think anyone, at least for me, I didn't want to attract losing friends. I mean, I lost friends. I just, but it wasn't important enough to like, they're not really my friends if this is going to happen eventually. But yeah, I think it's a combination. And I love what you said about, 100% your responsibility. I soften that statement, even though I'm by that statement. I soften it for my audience because I'm always concerned that if I put it a certain way, they won't hear it well enough to serve themselves. So the way I say it is like, listen, anything that happens to you, good or bad, it may or may not be your fault, but it's definitely your responsibility, because I think sometimes if we worry about like the word fault, then people like they don't want to hear it. Like, no, I will not even accept, like, fine, I won't even worry about whether it's your fault or not. But let's just understand it's your as in response ability. It's no one but you can now react and respond to the moment in a way that will hopefully serve you better moving from here. It's like, oh, you lost your job. That sucks. You might have been the best person there. Maybe you did not deserve that, but you still lost it. Meaning, it's on you. Now you got to find a new job, whether it was your fault that you got fired or not. It's still your responsibility. So I appreciate you saying that. And I was like, I kind of put it out there in that way where I think it's important for people to understand that the responsibility is so important to take, whether or not they feel they are right or wrong in
Mm-hmm.
whatever led to what happened to them.
Yeah, no, and nowhere did I ever say the word fault, and that's where people go.
And
They
you
automatically,
didn't, by the way.
yeah,
You by the way, so for clear, I don't think you said anything wrong. That's a statement. I just use that as an
yeah.
opportunity to go on because you made such an important point. And I think sometimes people hear responsibility and they assign fault. People are weird. People will take the easiest, simplest, myself included, the most constructive and healthy statement, and they will find a way. If they are in a pattern of negative, they'll find a way to undo the benefit that they could receive through it.
No, I agree with that, and I like the word. I mean, I take it so with responsibility is you are response able. You're
Yes.
able to respond. If you don't take 100% responsibility, then you hand over that power to you're not able to respond. That becomes more of a victim mentality. But if I take 100% responsibility outside of take the whole fault piece out of it, right, then I'm able to respond, right, and now
Yes.
I'm empowering myself to move forward or learn from it or grow or whatever the fact is that the universe is actually bringing you.
Yeah, it's almost like if you're in Vegas and they tell you, listen, this next round, it's gonna go on red. It's definitely gonna go on red. Now you can either put your chips on red or you could flip a coin. And whatever it comes up, it goes red or black. Why would you flip the coin when you already know the answer and you know that if you take that action, you're gonna be better? I think it's the same thing where people flip the coin and they forfeit their response
Mhm.
ability. And sometimes you don't know. I mean, I'm using an extreme example, like it's going to be on red. All I'm saying is, why leave it to chance when you could at least try to constructively, try to proactively move yourself in a better direction and increase the odds of your happiness and success and whatever happens after now.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to move on to the next question because I'm going to, and you sort of preempted it. I'm not sure, like, I'm not trying to set you up here. But you talked about, loss of a business. And I think that any successful entrepreneur that I've ever talked to, even myself being one of them, who have lost a company. And when you go through it, it is not very much fun. And but the amount of growth that you actually, it's fail forward, right, is
Yes.
that's how I see it. So I'm not trying to set you up with this question, and we'll see where you go with it because obviously you are the guest. So I want to, my question is, what's one of the biggest things that's ever happened to you that ruffled your feathers?
Mm.
And how did you respond to it?
So this kind of goes into, like, I guess a second origin story because, I mean, called a feather ruffling moment. I I went through a really bad week where I lost that company or really gave it up. And I lost a 3-year relationship, like all within like 3 days of one another.
Hmm.
And it was this real ironic thing because I was so desperately trying to keep, and I was in the wrong mindset and I had so much to learn. I was so desperately trying to keep the business afloat that I was not giving the relationship, and my fault, my responsibility, both in this case. I was not giving the relationship the attention that it needed. And I saw the writing on the wall and I'm like, listen, the business is dead anyway, and this relationship is about to be dead. So I gave up the business, which is, I mean, you can say either way. Like it was not going to be salvaged anyway, but it was too little, too late. And 3 days later, she just broke up over text. 3 year relationship. She didn't break up over the phone or in person, like just a text message. That's shows you how frustrated she was. And it was frustrating for me in the sense that like, I had been, solid 6 years, I think, around 6 years into trying to make the business work. And 4 years, I'd been aware of the law of attraction and a bunch of other, by the way, how many modalities did I go through in this attempt to find a quote unquote secret to happiness and success? And this ruffling feather moment, it was really interesting because it really forced me to look in the mirror and say, okay, Andrew, you've wasted your 20s. You're alone now. You've lost this relationship. You've lost your company that you worked so hard to like somehow make this work. And I basically had this weird simultaneous moment of epiphany and feeling of indignation, where it's like, listen, looking back on all this stuff, the only time I ever started to be successful in all these years was that law of attraction thing, where like when I started to do the gratitude and visualization methods, but didn't stop. Like it seemed like it was working and then I would stop. I'm
Hmm.
like, you know what? I don't care what happens. I don't care when it happens. I don't care why it happens. I don't care how it happens. I am going all in with this thing once and for all. And when I say all in, I don't mean all day, every day, because Mr. Pattern Recognition here and Mr. Human Nature Studier here understood that no matter how angry I was in the moment, it was not going to be sustainable to do this all day, every day. But I wasn't, when things were starting to work, I wasn't doing that all day, every day either. I was just doing 5 or 10 minutes of gratitude and visualization that started to lead to things. So I put it on myself like, I am going to, I don't care. I don't care if I succeed. I'm going to do this every day. And when I made that decision, like it's almost like a Hollywood movie where everything changed. Like 2 weeks later, I felt better. And when I say better, I don't mean 100%. I just mean a lot better than anyone with a broken heart had any business feeling. 3 months later, I was in a brand new, way healthier relationship with someone that was a lot better for me. And I had grown and matured and I was better for her. 4 months later, I'm making more money than at any point in my life before then. 6 months later, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm waking up happy and fulfilled. And I basically learned the hard way that this thing, and we'll call it the law of attraction. By the way, I can explain how it's valid even if you don't believe in the law of attraction. But this, we'll call it the law of attraction. This thing works if you work it. And no matter what happened after that moment, I kind of had this insight like, all I have to do is do this and to stop stopping. And don't let success be some excuse for a part of my mind to sabotage me and keep me from doing this. So this ruffling feather moment, which I wouldn't wish on anyone, fortunately I was able to leverage and use to actually succeed in life. And they kind of became the inspiration 11 years later when I finally decided to write the law of attraction book.
So a very we will take and label as a negative scenario
Mm-hmm.
turned into a very positive one.
So I turned it into a positive one. And I turned a negative scenario that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Because like it's funny because people are like, hey, do you have any regrets? And I love the people that go, I have no regrets because it got me to this moment. I'm like, that's a good perspective. I am so grateful for everything I've been like all the success that I've achieved since then. But I still like I'm kind of like I still wish I didn't have to go through that to get the lesson. I mean, if I did, so be it. And like I'm not going to I'm not going to cry over spilled milk. But I also do have this awareness like it was so uncomfortable. And I wish I didn't have to go through that. And maybe I didn't, but I was the one that was dropping it was my responsibility to do something about it. And I had years prior to that to bring a turnaround. And it was only in that rock bottom moment. Not that anyone has to go through a rock bottom moment, but fortunately, I had the right attitude of doing it because listen, now to Mr. Cliche here, life is going to knock you down. And that's almost no question. Law of attraction or not, I mean, there's going to be times where at least you perceive life as knocking you down, even if it's not really. It's really important to have the mindset, in my viewpoint, like the only thing you can do strategically for yourself, whether you deserved it or not, and whether it was right or wrong that whatever happened to you, strategically, the best thing you want to do for yourself is try to respond as constructively and proactively as possible. Not because, oh, you're just better than everyone else, but because that's the best chance you have of having a better life following whatever defeat or whatever loss you experienced.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I don't know. I kind of look at it as, I see it as a pendulum. That's how I see it. And
Mm-hmm.
so as you take a pendulum and you go, the further you go into, we'll call it negative. I'm just going to use this to make it simple. If you take it up, with the pendulum, as far as you take it up one way and let it go, it goes equal and opposite direction the other way.
Yeah.
One feeds the other, but I don't see them as good or bad.
Mm.
I see them as experience. And so one is, as you go deep into what we'll call the negative experience, and you let it go, and you have your epiphany, your pendulum will automatically swing to that opposite side. Because you can't see one without the other.
Yeah.
You have to have the equal and opposite experience to actually be able to be able to actually see what's there.
And what I hear in your response, Warren, is basically a healthy, constructive way of viewing this, where you don't view, I mean, you don't view or you don't fear failure. I don't even know if you would call it failure, but you certainly don't fear these bad things. You coming in with that healthy approach, like, listen, things are going to happen. They're going to swing certain ways, rather than taking it personally and using it as an excuse to be defeated. It's just part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the step on the way to success and happiness, and this is just me moving forward.
Yeah, fail forward. That's how I see it. So
Mm-hmm.
you said something earlier, Andrew, that I want to be able to dive into. And you said about talking about the law of attraction, sort of we'll say there's, I think, I'm not sure you used the word proof, but I think it was the proof of how it works. I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
you said. So do you
Yes,
want to just talk a little bit about that?
absolutely. And I bring that up because I realize law of attraction, it's such an interesting thing because, one, when The Secret came out in 2006, it blew up and it was on Oprah and this and that, which made it a fad.
Mm-hmm.
And fads, whether they are relevant, whether they are legitimate or not, they end up being disregarded. They end up being viewed as like old hat, like, ugh. Even though law of attraction is still like this very popular concept. But also another thing why I want to say this is because I think a lot of people, they heard about the law of attraction and they tried it, and to them it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it did, but they didn't realize why it didn't. So let me first give the explanation of how it works, even if you don't believe in it. And then I'll even reveal, if you'd like, which I say in the book, why most people fail with it. But the perspective I give, like, okay, don't believe in the law of attraction. Let's use this little example of lifting weights to build muscle. Now, I know that's oversimplified because lifting weights is more, but we understand the concept. You lift weights, you get more muscles. Okay. I'm going to give you two possible explanations as to how that works. Explanation number one is you lift weights and you go to sleep. And when you're sleeping at night, the muscle fairy comes and waves a magic wand, and poof, you wake up the next day with more muscle. Explanation two is when you are lifting weights, you're actually putting so much stress on your body that your muscles are actually tearing in little areas. And then your body's self-healing mechanism kicks in and it fills in those tears. It fills in those gaps with more muscle fiber, hence more muscles. Now, that in and of itself is not the most intelligent, polished explanation, but I think most people would say, well, if it's going to be one of those two, it has to be that second one. To which I respond to people, unless you're a personal trainer or a physical therapist or someone that really needs to understand the mechanics, it actually doesn't matter. What does matter is you lift weights, you get muscles. You put in X, you get Y. And by that same token, whether you believe in the law of attraction or not, if you commit to a couple minutes a day of gratitude and positive thinking, by hook or by crook, things will happen. And if you, by the way, please don't believe me. Don't believe me. All I would say is give yourself those 5 minutes of gratitude instead of 5 minutes of worrying or 5 minutes of being under stress. Take 5 minutes out and feel good. And then in 30 days or 15 days or 45 days or 90, whatever, because you're feeling good every day. So it doesn't matter when it comes. But when results start to come, don't give me credit. Don't give my book credit. Don't give the law of attraction or the universe credit. Don't give anyone credit, but at least acknowledge that you made this behavioral change and you got these results, and just keep experimenting and see where it goes. My attitude is, whether or not the law of attraction is real, at the very least, I think everyone could agree that feeling good, positive emotion for just 5 minutes a day, physiologically alone, is healthier for you than being stressed and worrying about something during that time. And that's my explanation. Like, it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, just try this thing. And if I'm wrong, fine, but you're still getting a win. Even if you don't get that thing manifested, that result, just those 5 minutes a day is a victory in and of itself. You've already won.
Absolutely. And I always tell people about, the people who worry, says it's never getting enough of what you don't want.
Mm.
And if you keep driving that same behavior, that same mindset, is never getting enough of what you don't want. And you keep chasing after what you don't want, and you're wondering why you're not getting it.
Yeah.
So, right. So that's really interesting. And I love you. I love the fact that you say too about even just 5 minutes of gratitude. Like, you've already, at that point, you're already winning, right?
Yes.
Just doing that alone.
Even if you don't get the big mansion that The Secret promised, even though it didn't promise, people interpret that way. Or you don't get the big car, or the new husband, new wife. Like, by the way, one of the reasons that people don't get those things is because when they are doing their positive visualizations or their gratitude, or whatever, they're doing it through gritted teeth. You actually kind of just said this, Warren, in your own way. They're gritting their teeth trying to force it, which is basically, whether you believe in energy of the universe or you just believe in the power of your subconscious mind, they're energetically and psychologically screaming to the universe and to themselves that they don't have that thing. And therefore the reality is being reinforced. Let's discard the universe. Let's just talk about the power of your subconscious mind. If you keep screaming to your subconscious mind that you don't have that job promotion, of course you're going to be sabotaged, because you're putting the programming in. Whereas if you're just visualizing what that promotion is going to be like, without worrying about the when or the how of when you get it, then because you feel good emotionally while thinking about that promotion, now you're feeding your mind, your subconscious mind, the ingredients it needs to bake that cake for you. And then it'll be weird, because you'll carry yourself differently. You'll have a tonality of your voice and the inflection, eye contact. You'll be excited about working on a Saturday. You'll have the initiative to do that extra project. You will do these things where, by hook or by crook, people will notice you, the bosses will notice you, and poof, it's the promotion. And is it magic? Oh, I don't know. Is it because you worked hard? Oh, I don't know. Does it matter? I don't care. What matters is like, you got that promotion, right? Finally, you do it by not gritting your teeth and worry, like asking yourself, when's it coming, every day, and reaffirming that reality. But just like, let me just feel good while thinking about what I have or what I want, or both, and seeing what happens from there.
If I was to simplify that, is don't get in your own way.
Yes. Perfectly stated. Well, really, stop getting in your own way, because most people, it isn't think that it's think like, don't do it yet. They're already doing it. And by the way, I'm not above anyone in this. I still get, even though I realize this, I have my own patterns that sometimes I don't spot right away. Listen, I've sold 100,000 copies of the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, but I haven't sold 1 million yet. I want 1 million. Am I going to get there? Could I have gotten there faster? Probably, but I am strategically choosing not to worry about it so much, because it was the not worrying, I believed, that helped me have the positive energy and the best strategies and just the best approach that resulted in 100,000 books being sold. If I looked at everybody around me that sold millions of copies and was jealous of them and dwelled on that, I don't think I would be 100,000 plus copies deep in right now. So I'm at the very least, I'm more of healthy perspective, but I'm sure there is a block there. There's nothing that the book's out for, like, November will be 3 years. There's no reason technically why I couldn't have hit 1 million copies in the first 6 months. Something could have happened. I could have gone on, Joe Rogan could have noticed me, or something else. It didn't happen, but that's fine. What I'm saying is, there's always a way of doing it better and faster. But by that same token, I'm strategically being grateful for what I have, because 100,000 copies for an independent author is like, we're in unicorn territory here. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to acknowledge, like, it's really important to be grateful for this, to acknowledge every last reader who paid their hard-earned money for that book, and the fact that enough people learned about it that they would even choose or consider buying it in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you say though about it was the not worrying.
Mm,
I think that
yeah.
is key right there. I think that's a little nugget I just wrote down. Like, it's about the not worrying that allowed things to flow.
And I fully realize that is so much easier said than done. By the way, I realize when I say that, I say it so nonchalantly, and I'm sure there's got to be some people listening, like, yeah, whatever. But my situation, no, you're right. Your situation is different. All I'm saying is, it is easier said than done. But if you could somehow, like, find a way to be happy to whatever measure you can in your life right now, you were literally strategically setting the intentions and creating the space for better things to come. And you don't have to believe me. All I'm saying is, just try, just try, and be open and willing to see what happens from there.
Well, I think you're kind of leading to this next question, and the next question is, it's an interesting one because it's going to directly and indirectly apply to you. So as I was talking about, as a geese fly 71% faster and further when they fly in the V formation. There's my metaphor. So geese, when they're flying in the V formation, 71% further and faster. So it's about efficiency. And my question I typically put out is, what do you think is the secret to get a team flying in the V formation? I'm going to rephrase that question for you, right? And to say that what do you feel would take for a person to fly 71% further and faster with what you know and with what you teach and with what you do?
Right. So let me let's actually we'll use the context of this teamwork, right? And by the way, please correct me if I'm wrong, because you know more about geese than I do. But I imagine there's a geometric advantage for the teamwork that they employ in that specific formation that helps. That helps. Well, one, they know where they're going, but I would hope that maybe it mitigates the wind resistance. Maybe there's a combination of things happening there, but whatever it might be, there's harmony. That V formation is a harmony.
Yes.
And in the context of a team, like if you are running a business and you've got people around you, there needs to be harmony there. But I want to answer your question, how you rephrased it to me. Harmony is still the answer for me. If I'm alone, I'm a one-man show. Well, I'm still on a team, and I'm on a team with the universe, if you want to believe that. I'm on a team with God, if you have religious views that go in that place, or I'm just on a team with my subconscious mind. I'm on a team with internal and external resources and resourcefulness, where it's about having harmony with that, which is why I say, when you're grateful, when you're trying to be proactive, when you're trying to be constructive, when you're trying not to dwell on regret or dwell on loss, when you're looking at responsibility rather than fault, the key to going that 71% extra, whatever it might be, the key to getting that leverage and getting that extra momentum is momentum and consistency and commitment, but through a harmony, through an understanding. Like, listen, I don't want to do this in some kind of disjointed way. I want to do it in a way where I feel right within myself. Not because I'm listening to all the magazines that say that you have to love what you do, but because I understand psychologically, when you do love what you do, to whatever measure, you're going to be a lot more committed. You're going to be a lot more enthusiastic. You're going to pour a different kind of energy into it, a different kind of focus, a different kind of intention. So it's all about harmony, whether it's in an actual team with actual birds or actual people, or just you and the the corporeal and incorporeal resources and resourcefulness around you.
So you look at that from an really, if you look at that from an energy perspective, if you align yourself, right, which is, and there's the harmony, and I'm sort of paraphrasing this as just thinking as you're speaking, right? If as you get into that alignment with that energy, so when you put that energy out, whether it's going to be I mean, I get stuck in positive and negative, but the energy out of the things in the direction that you want to go and create that alignment. I mean, that's where that efficiency, that's where that 71% comes in. But you're not alone.
Right. Even when you're alone, you're not alone. Because so some people, by the way, this is all about mindset and perspective. Some people, when they are alone, they take it upon themselves of them against the world, but they do it. There's a way of doing it from a confident perspective and not so confident. Like some people, it's like this vision, they're on their hero quest, their hero journey. So they actually see that as part of the process. And because they see it as part of the process, they have an extra confidence. But then there's other people that they see themselves as alone, and they use that as an excuse to why things aren't working out. If anyone listening, if you're that type of that person's like, oh, you're not alone. Like, your subconscious mind alone has all the resources and resourcefulness and intelligence and strategy to get you, like, that brilliant idea for that book is waiting inside you, or that product, or that one move you got to make in your business, or that one extra thing that you have to do, like whatever it might be. But also, again, if you're religious, like if you believe God is with you and God's with you, if you believe the universe is with you, you will behave and perform on a higher level. And that's, whether those things are really there or not. That's what I'm trying to say is like, whether those things are not, if you're just willing to embrace that reality and that understanding, you'll be shocked at how smooth things go. You'll be shocked at the epiphanies you have. You'll be shocked at the results that come out seemingly out of nowhere. Like, it seems like magic because technically it is magic in the sense that it wasn't possible before in your old way of operating.
Mm.
What is the miraculous other than that which is not seen as physically possible or nearly physically possible? Well, things just happen. And again, the reason I can say this with such confidence is because I have lived it experientially.
Mhm.
That's like the thing about like my book, the whole thing in the Law of Attraction book. It's basically I've structured it in a way to try to get people out of their own head and out of their own space so that they can do it long enough to get the result. Because when they start to get the result, it's not me or my book teaching them, it's their own life experience. And once your life experience teaches you something, nobody can ever take that away from you because you've lived it.
Right. Absolutely. And which, of course, helps build confidence. We were talking earlier about looking back to look forward, right? Of looking back at what has happened to realize, hey, that happened. And if that happened, looking backwards, it gives me the confidence to move forward. So if I do more of that, then I move forward. And then once that next thing happens, I look backwards and say, look at that. Look what happened. And it's not about ego. This isn't an egoic thing. This is how you've actually aligned with the universe to actually, and then you are responsible for your life.
Yes. Yeah. And just, it's so amazing because there's things that you do where it feels like it's on purpose and things are done for you. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
You like, all right, where might this conversation go with us? Well, someone might hear this and they might read my book and they might, they might like, hey, Andrew, like, we want to offer you X amount of dollars to do XYZ. Like, what an opportunity. Maybe that leads to something. By that same token, I'm going to bring my audience to this interview afterwards, right? Maybe someone in my audience is going to hear the way you're asking these insightful questions and they have an opportunity for you. Now, are we purposely trying to make those opportunities look? We're just having a great conversation here. We're doing this action, this intention where we're both committed to this moment, but who knows what might seemingly happen on its own following it based on this podcast being broadcast out into the world and to other people to hear and to respond to and to be inspired by and maybe to take action on in a way specifically with you or me.
Right. Oh no, that's exactly it. So the intention itself is to provide information and have conversation and inspire others, and it's just creating the ripple effect.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you, by the way. Like me, who I like to take things and simplify. Thank you for taking my word salad and like you've consistently done this the whole interview. People can listen from the beginning. You narrow down to like 4 or 5 words, 2, 3 words. Ripple effect. It's just it ripple that one drop. And I apologize for interrupting. I didn't want to ignore it. It's like you drop that one little pebble, and it just ripples out, and who knows what it reaches? Who knows the fish that are noticed that vibration? Who knows how it affects the soil and the land and anything else and everything else around it?
it's I look, so of course with my metaphor I call it the habitat. So it affects everything in your habitat. So which is the perfect preempt into the next question: is what are you doing right now, Andrew, to better the pond? And believe it or not, the question is, what ripples are you creating?
So right now it really is about both the books. And both the books are so different. One's for people that they just want to improve their life in general and maybe give the law of attraction a try. And again, my goal is like, I call it the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read. I really want to be the thing like, listen, once you read this, you'll never need any more information. You can just act on it. But then, of course, I've had a lot of authors reach out to me noticing I'm selling so many books independently. Like, how'd you do it? Let me just give you my marketing strategy rather than like, trying to like have some big expensive $2,000 course. Not that there's anything wrong with that because I might have one day also. Let me give you a book that you can buy for $4 on Amazon that gives my whole marketing blueprint. So basically through these focal points and through future projects I'm going to do, I just want to try to create these options for people if it's of their interest to create success and whatever through their own lives. But also I'm doing a lot on my YouTube channel in support of the Law of Attraction book because I think there's a ripple effect there also. So really, I guess that's my word salad way of saying like more of the same. I'm doing more of what I've been doing in the hopes that the information and the way by which I communicate the information will be user friendly and easy to implement. And the word that you used, simple for people to kind of take on their own.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the fact that even with your book, Andrew, you say that how many people will get into law of attraction and they stop. And then they start back up and they stop. And and so this is definitely not efficiency. And I love the fact that you've taken that. I think it's a really important concept, right? And throw it into your book and say, hey, here's the reason why, and here's what you can do about it. And I mean, those ripples, those ripples can be generational. I mean, they could just keep on going and going and going because the fact of how it impacts everyone else around you.
It's funny you say, like, everyone listening right now that they haven't been rich yet and they just want to be a millionaire. I love them to consider the possibility, not only that they'll get to be a millionaire, but they might have an idea that can literally be the next Coca-Cola, the next Google, the next Apple, the next thing that becomes a billionaire estate for future generations. And don't be dependent on that, but like, just consider that possibility. Like, even until I've said these words myself, I don't know if I've ever considered that for myself. But when we're done with this conversation, I'm literally going to take time to meditate on that, because it's like you reach for the moon and you hit the stars, or I think I might have reversed that. Like, just throwing that grand concept in your mind might get the wheels churning in your subconscious mind or energetically in the universe to getting you towards a really big win way sooner and way better than you were expecting.
Get out of your own way. So, Andrew, what in your rich time on this earth and on the pond, what's one lesson that you've learned that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
So this is when we're going to get more practical and less, esoteric. But even though it all kind of contributes somewhere. When I started out, I think it's so important to understand how to sell. And by the way, learn copywriting if you don't, because that'll teach you sales on a higher level than you could ever imagine. But an even higher level is make sure you understand how and why the thing that you're selling is actually useful to the person that you're trying to sell it to or serve with it. Like that. And it's funny I say that seems so simple, but I think sometimes people get into business and they're so excited about making money and being successful, they almost maybe assume that their thing is useful. And maybe it is, but maybe it's not even useful in the way that they think it is. Maybe they haven't gone deep enough. It's like, like an iPhone, right? Imagine someone's like, you never seen the iPhone before. Like, here, it's got great connection, great calls. What about the internet on that thing? What about all the apps? You haven't even considered that. You're not even selling that part. It's like there's always a better way for myself and everyone out there that you can serve better. And when you really commit to that, as much of a cliche as it sounds, that's where success explodes. And again, just look at examples. Google is so successful because it serves people, the way it serves people. Coca-Cola, people like the taste. It's a reliable. All these massive successes. Look at every success that you've seen and try to find a way where it hasn't massively served. You can't do it. So every entrepreneur out there, really get in tune with the service that your product or service will really provide, the use, the value, the utility. That will take you so much further, so much faster than you could ever imagine.
So it's not that's not the product or the service of itself. It is actually how it will actually focus on how it serves others.
It's the impact.
The impact. Got it. One last question, which I did not share with you earlier, Andrew. And my question is, if you were standing on a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Wow. Don't automatically assume that what you know is what is. With an unrelenting willingness and determination and promise to always try to do right by others and try to be a good person, at the same time, look at your viewpoints and ask yourself, if there's anything about that. Can you look at the opposing viewpoint and try to find validity in hopes that you find a higher level of awareness and a higher way by which you can serve and be served by others?
Hmm. That's just thoughts to ponder. So one of my favorite lines is, "Don't believe everything you think." And so you're obviously in taking that. I think it's very, very great advice of how someone else's viewpoint and how can you serve others, right? Make it
Yes.
something bigger and better.
You don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
I don't want to talk politics. It's just not my style.
Hmm.
But I would argue, like, wherever you lean politically, anyone listening, literally you should challenge yourself with the other TV network, their narrative and their message, not because you're trying to dispel your own beliefs or throw that down, but just to get a wider, more insightful look at your own views. Because looking at the other viewpoint might actually make you more resolute in your views, but for a better reason, or it might give you a perspective you were never ever expecting and enable you to be a better person in your own life and to others.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice, actually, because it'll always expand your own thinking, and we do tend to get locked into our ideals. We get locked into our beliefs, and we don't sometimes take the time or the effort or the energy to expand. And
Yeah.
that's where we grow.
And I'm real quick, I'm a New Yorker, so I know about like the Yankees Red Sox thing. And the funny thing about Yankees Red Sox, it's like, if a Yankee player was like, shown to be taking steroids, all the Red Sox fans are angry and all the Yankee fans are defending them, but then vice versa. If there's
Right.
like a Boston player who did so, and I think with our viewpoints on in terms of everything, whether it's politically or otherwise, it almost becomes like it's our team, it's the Yankees, the Red Sox, and becomes like this point of identity. And I think it's a very dangerous thing to fall. Like when you fall into that point of identity, you're basically then letting like your whole team set your agenda for you.
Hmm.
And again, I'm not saying your team is wrong. I'm saying, you've got to look at it. Don't You've got to look at through a higher level, because your team might be righter than you ever could have imagined. But if you don't look at the other way, if you just fall for that, you won't even understand that higher level of what your team really wants to accomplish and really wants to do in the world.
Right. Absolutely. Andrew, I want to be a good steward of time, and I want to thank you sincerely for being normal when you were a kid and being average when you were a kid, because of the fact that, go back to your story, is how you took that premise and you didn't want to be, you wanted to expand yourself past it. And because you've expanded yourself past that being average, right, that you are creating the ripple effect to help so many, 100,000 plus people around you. So if you never had that mindset, then you would never be who you are now, because who you are now is actually helping change the world.
Hmm. Warren, thank you for that. And, throw it back at you. Thank you for living your life and your own trials and tribulations. They got you to this because, if I may, you asked some really insightful questions. I love the way you guided the interview, and I know that's no accident. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your audience. I appreciate the show, and I just really appreciate being here. And thank you for pulling so much out of me. There's things I've said in this interview. I've had over 200 interviews in the past 3 years. There's things I've said in this interview that I've never said before. So thank you for pulling stuff out of me.
Oh, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. All right, there you have it. Andrew, thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you're doing to better the pond. And thank you for sharing your stories and stories that you've never told before. So that's even better. If people want to go find you, Andrew, where do they go?
Very easily. You can go to awesomemarvelous.com, which has links to both books and my YouTube channel, or andrewkap.com, which doesn't have the 3 words link, but it has the other stuff. So awesomemarvelous.com or andrewkap.com. Very simple, easy website. You said simple. When people go on either of those websites, they'll know what simple is all about, because it's so plain, very direct, just gives people links to what they need and nothing else.
It is very simple. You've definitely simplified it. And then how about on the social media platforms?
Well, I kind of view YouTube and like Andrew Kap on YouTube, I kind of view it as social media, but also people can find me Andrew Kap Insta on Instagram. And I mean, I'm on Facebook. It's if I remember right, it's Andrew Kap, DOTCOM, like andrewkap.com. But for the most part, I mean, Instagram's probably best to kind of see good representation of what I'm doing. But more, I think, I'd encourage people, like, if they're not gonna pull out their wallets for the books, which is fine, my YouTube, it's free. That would probably offer them the most benefit and the most content and value for their dollar, which is $0 because it's YouTube and it's free.
I guess you can't beat free. But I still would recommend that people go to Amazon and pick up your book. That way they can have it, they can read it, and if they don't have internet connection, there it is right in front of you. So there you have it, folks. I had a great time with Andrew. I really, again, appreciate you. And this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you.